Hi there, I'm showing you how I make my Dreamcatcher earrings, but it will be the same if you wanted to make a pendant. So you can just follow this technique to create earrings or make one as a pendant or as a keyring, or create it much larger scale and hang it on the wall. So I'm using 1.6 mil aluminium wire only because it shows up well for a tutorial, but you can use any wire gauge, preferably I'd say 1 mil for this outer circular framework. So you want to cut a circle, just use the size that you want, a radius that you want, and wrap it around something cylindrical to create that circle. And you want them to overlap, the circles to overlap, and then you've got enough to make the stem to hang it off. So you can see I've got an overlapping end. I'm going to bend one to a right angle, and that will be the suspension link or the stem that's going to hang it from, and then the other side will just be the link to secure it around. So bend one end up, and then with the other end just create a very, very small little hook with the ends of your round nose pliers. And then if you just position the stem in that hook and squeeze the wire around that, you'll secure the circle without distorting it. So I always find, rather than wrapping the wire around the stem where I can distort the circle, I find this much better. So just a little hook, feed it into the hook, and then squidge and squish the wire around it, and that way you haven't distorted the circle. But if you want to just to check that it's still circular and you haven't sort of, when you manipulate it to sort of like get the frame right, you might want to reshape it again around your mandrel. Sorry, I've got a very odd mandrel. It's actually an old doming block, but this one's become a little bit smaller, this circle, so I'm just having to wiggle it a bit just to make sure it's nice and circular before I start my weaving. So to make sure these frames are really work hardened and tempered, I use the whammer hammer to hammer on a steel block, and that way I'm tempering the wire, flattening it, spreading it, but also making it nice and tough. So the frame is firm, especially with aluminium wire. You wouldn't have to do that if it was half hard 1 mil wire, but because the aluminium is soft, I want to do that. So now I'm going to make the suspension hook. So I'm just using my round nose pliers, bending the wire forward so that I have the link sitting central to my frame. So do that because we're making earrings, we've got to do that for both frames. So there you are, you're ready now to start weaving. So with the weaving, I'm using 0.4 millimeter silver plated copper, but you can use any thin gauge wire that you have to hand. It'll work with any thin gauge that's nice and soft and easy to weave with. So you start off with a nice long arm's length, and you're going to just connect that or secure it to the top. Just wrap it around the top link so that it's secure, flatten it down, make sure it's not going to move anywhere and not going to come apart. And then you want to make a little curve, just a tiny little curve. Use your fingernail really to create that curve, and then wrap it around the side of the frame, and then create another curve, and then wrap it around the side of the frame. It's like little scallop curves all the way around the frame, and every time you wrap it once around the frame to secure, and then another little curve again, once around the frame again, and that way you create this whole sort of little scalloped edge within that circular framework. So just go all the way around until you've finished that outer frame. So there we have that sort of scalloped edged piece. And the next bit with the weaving is you want to take the end of the wire, go through one of those curves, so go in from the front, bring the wire through, making sure it doesn't get sort of kinked, and then push it through the loop underneath the curve, and then just gently bring it through until it sits in the middle of the curve, and then go through the next one, through the middle of the next curve, bring it through and back into the loop, and then bring it through to the center of that top curve. And you keep weaving in this way all the way around until you get to the center point. So in through the front, back through the loop at the base, just gently bring it through. And the most important thing as you're doing this is to keep the wire straight. So I'm feeding it through my fingers every time. You don't want kinks, you don't want knots in the wire, you want this wire to flow. So that's what you've really got to concentrate on, is keeping it flowing throughout. And I'm not saying that the first time you do this you'll get it perfect. It takes a bit of practice. I've had lots of knots, I've had lots of little kinks, I've had all sorts of problems, but don't worry, because you can always start the wire again if you know your piece doesn't go to plan and you need to add a new piece in, or so it takes a bit of practice. Like anything, anything you're learning will need a bit of practice, and I have made quite a few of these, so don't think I've got to this stage of just being able to weave these little scalloped weaving edges so easily by doing just one or two. So once you've woven quite a, all the way to the center, and you've got a sort of circular gap in the middle, that's when you can add your bead. And I'm adding a pearl of wisdom, of course. So I've got a dyed pearl, and I'm going to put that in the center of my earring, and I've got to secure it on the part of the framework or the weaving that's opposite. So I'm just going to wrap it once around. It's such fine wire and my bead is so light, it just needs one little wrap around, and then I can cut off the end and just make sure it's all been flattened down, there's no spiky ends there. I mean, you could make a little spiral if you wanted to, if you had lots of wire left over. And there we have the framework, and you can just flatten down any lumps and bumps and just go around it and make sure it looks okay. What I sometimes do is get my nylon head on the whammer and just gently tap any of the wires that need flattening down, and that also work hardens and tempers it and makes sure it's sort of sits in place. So there's your framework before you put the feather on, and you're ready to go with the next earring. So the feather, then I have actually put a little, you can buy feathers or collect feathers when you go on a walk or something like that, but I actually bought this one, and you can get these little findings that grip at the top. So that's what I've done to my feathers. You just can buy them online, and they give you a little loop at the top. They just squeeze like a crimp around the top of the feather and have a little top link. And then you just get your jump ring, open it up sideways, link that in to the crimped end at the top of the feather, and that will sit at the end, so it'll drop off the end of your Dreamcatcher earrings. Close that up, and there you have one of them ready, and all you need to do is put the earring findings onto that piece. But I just want to show you, if you run out of wire, this is just a bit of troubleshooting. Say you run out of wire, you haven't got enough, and you need to add more. So I want to show you that. So you'll finish off wherever you finish off, and just wrap it around once, squeeze it down, and then get your next piece or your next length of 0.4 binding wire or whatever wire you're using, and go back in the place where you finished, leaving a stem. So I'm leaving a nice long stem of at least an inch or an inch and a half, and then wrap around, hold your finger where you want that wire to be, so grip it tightly there, and then continue weaving as we were doing. So you want to wrap it round twice actually, just to fix it. So I'm just wrapping it around twice so it's not going to move, and then you just carry on with your weaving. So back through the front, pull it through, a loop at the base, and then keep going round and round. And with that little stem that was sticking out, projecting end that was sticking out where you sort of secured it, with that, what you can do, rather than just cut it off and leave a piece there, you can actually just create a tiny little spiral. You know me and spirals, well, I always put them in if I can. So just create a little hook, squeeze that hook together, spiral that very fine wire around, and bring it around. And I always find spirals are great because they're just so decorative, and they can hide the little sort of wraps and the workings and the bindings and anything that was there. You won't see, it's all hidden underneath that spiral. So I just wanted to show you that. That's what I tend to do. Doesn't mean you have to do it, but it's my little signature thing. So there we have it, my Dreamcatcher earrings, and they also could be pendants, but I hope you like making some for yourself. Thank you for watching.